In the midst of the health crisis, Brazil has also been plagued by a socio-economic crisis over the past year. The country has record unemployment rate, 20 million Brazilians are going hungry, and inflation is above 10%. We have more details in the following report with our correspondent André Vieira and Sebastián Soto.
2021 began with the interruption of the pandemic aid paid by the government to almost 68 million Brazilians. The welfare initiative returned in April, excluding half those who benefited before and paying 4 times less. Then in December, the government launched the Auxílio Brasil program, which excluded more than 22 million families served by the pandemic welfare program last year. 2021 was also the year of record prices for meat and gasoline, and an inflation rate above 10%. And there is the inflation issue again. And this is linked to the position of the current government. The economic proposal, since we have an inflation rate that is not linked to demand, but to the supply, and fundamentally administered prices. We're talking about the price of fuel, which is set by the Petrobras price policy. We're talking about electric energy, which is another administered price. And we're talking about the price of food. Research by the Pension Network shows that more than 20 million Brazilians are hungry, and that 55% of the country's population is experiencing food insecurity. This rate has increased since the 2016 coup d'etat against former President Dilma Rousseff. In 2021, unemployment reached its highest level in history. There were 14.8 million people out of work in June. Last year ended with 38 million working in the informal economy and almost 13 million unemployed.
It's really very expensive and very difficult. We do not know what to do. It is complicated. I have many friends who were domestic workers and lost their jobs. The level of poverty has increased dramatically. The number of people living on the street has also increased. They were already homeless here, but with the pandemic, the number tripled. And all of this is a consequence of the coup that Brazil experienced. It is always good to remember that, because we cannot forget history.
When the pandemic began in 2020, more than 220,000 people were living on the streets in Brazil, and according to estimates, this number has increased. Over the past year, rent increased by almost 18%. Monica had to leave her home and begin living in a square.
I was living in a place where they increased the rent, and I couldn't afford to pay it, so I ended up on the streets.
The past year was also a year of solidarity, a year of great solidarity. Research by the Data Favela Institute showed that 92% of the inhabitants of impoverished communities that received donations would not have been able to eat in 2021 if it were not for the social mobilization. The Landless movement alone has donated more than 1 million lunches and 5,000 tons of food since the beginning of the pandemic throughout the country. The pattern of hunger has been reestablished in Brazil and is linked to informalization of the labor market, of the economy, but also the breakdown of social welfare programs. What used to work is no longer working. For 2022, the last year of Jair Bolsonaro's mandate and the year of the electoral campaign, the market expects growth of less than half a percentage point. Brazil is not suffering from any external blockade and will have to make an internal decision this year about its future and the quality of life of its people.
André Vieira e Sebastián Soto, teleSUR, Rio de Janeiro, Brasil.